Today you see two neat cardigans. They are very simple to make. There's 3 options in the same pattern and I made 2 of the options. They will be staples in black and navy. Stay with me to see all the details. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing. I have 2 cardigans to share today. There are 3 options in this pattern and they are pretty different to other cardigans I've sewn in the past, so I was really excited to sew these up. This is new from Sinclair Patterns called Rosy cardigan, and in the liner you're going to see that there are 3 different options here. They all use the same body pieces, the front and the back, the sleeves. There's different ways that you can finish the fronts. They have different shapes. All of these cardigans have different length options, and for the sleeves you can also choose different lengths. So those are options that are going to be the same for all. But then on one of them you can see that the shape in the center front is a rectangle. That is finished with a facing inside. It's got incorporated mitered corners there in the pattern pieces, so I think that is really cool. The one you see on the other side has a curved center front, a little bit shorter here. It ends up being the same length at the back, but it's just curved on the front. That is all finished with binding everywhere, no facings there. And then the one in the center is the one that I didn't sew, that has a shorter cut line sort of underneath the bust, and then a separate flounce piece that you add on that goes all the way around. I wanted to keep mine really basic, so I chose the ones on the outer edges of the liner that you see there. All of these necklines are finished with binding, and then you have 2 options. One is to leave the binding longer and have ties right there. The other one is to just have it the same length, and on one side it's a little longer, you do a little loop where it's just a button closure, single button. That is the option I've chosen for mine. I love that look, it's super clean. I love the look of a little button right there. I think it's really dainty. Sinclair Patterns has a separate add-on pack for neat styles that has a lot of sleeve options. If you have that sleeve add-on pack, it's compatible with this armhole, so you can even have more options. The Rosy cardigan is 27% off through the 3rd of December. That's a really good discount. It's still on its release sale days, so have a look at it if you want to grab it for a little bit less. Of course, I'm going to be showing you some practical sewing in this video, so there's helpful content here. And if you'd like to support my work, I'd really love it if you use my affiliate link. It's up to you, you don't pay anything extra. All that happens is that I get a small commission back, and that is one of the ways I make an income doing these helpful videos on YouTube. So if you use it, I'm very grateful. You need neat fabric for this. Don't try to make it up in a woven, it just won't fit. It's pretty fitted here on the upper chest and bust, so make sure that when you test your fabric, it stretches at least 30% horizontally and vertically. Recommended fabrics, I think the first choice would be a sweater knit, because most cardigans are made out of a sweater knit, but a nice French terry would work, a rib knit. Cotton lycra would also work as well, although it would just look a little bit more stiff. There are some fabrics that could be difficult to work with just because they're so drapey and clingy. I don't think facings work very well with these types of fabrics like rayon spandex, bamboo spandex, modal spandex. I think the option with a facing would be very difficult to work with. If you do have experience, I think you can make most fabrics work anyway. So that's just my take on those types of fabrics. For my 2 versions, I've chosen a sweater knit, which is perfect. And for the other one, I've chosen a rib knit, which is perfect as well. For the rectangle front, square front option, I did decide to interface that facing. I know this particular sweater knit, I've worked with it a lot. I have it in a ton of colorways. It's the same fabric I always work with. And with other styles, I have interfaced facings with a really good result, and I knew I was going to be happier if I interfaced them. So that was just my option. For the version that's in the middle, the one that I didn't sew, the one that has a flounce, I think for that one you need good drape. I wouldn't use cotton lycra for that one, or any fabric that's too structured. So I would use ITY, double brush poly, rayon spandex, all of those types of fabrics for the version in the middle specifically. I'm coming today from an outside type of sauna situation. It is very hot, friends. I just can't even, but I love filming out here, so I've made the sacrifice to come out here and film for you today outside because it's prettier. If you sew Sinclair Patterns, you might know that there are height files. That is super helpful, petite, regular, and tall. Choose that file first and then go off and see your measurements. So I'm always a tall file. That is super helpful. This pattern comes from sizes 0 to 30 US. That'll go up to a 63-inch hip, and my size is a 16 with a tall file. About the feet, as I mentioned, it's nice and fitted up here. It has to be, or else it would look really sloppy. So at the bust, you have pretty much 0 ease. Then at the waist, you have more space, and towards the hip, you're going to have almost 2 inches of ease. But if you're doing the flounce version, then you're gonna have a lot of ease at the hips. It'll be around 10 inches. So it's different for the versions. For the ones I'm sewing, it's just more streamlined and closer to the body. Fitting adjustments, 0, none whatsoever, because I'm choosing the height file that is according to my height. I'm perfect with that. I don't need to add length to anything. I didn't need to blend sizes. I just make my garment and call it a day. And that is so relaxing when you're sewing. I love that. I did film some sewing for you, and I did leave out the basic steps like shoulder seams and side seams. Now, particular to this cardigan, you need to sew the side seams first before you finish the neckline, because the necklines involve the hem as well. So that's different to other types of construction order that you might be accustomed to. If you like sewing your sleeves in on the flat, you're going to have to do that before doing the neckline, because you do the shoulders, the sleeve on the flat, and then all the sleeves and the side seam. Or you can do it like me, just to sew the side seams, sew your sleeves separately and then sew them on the round. So that is not included in today's episode. I did dedicate the filming time to the facing on that option with the rectangle center front, and to the curved center front on the other version. You'll see how to do the neckline binding, all the practical things you would really want to see instead of boring shoulder and side seams. I'm making 2 Rosy cardigans, and there's several versions options available. This is the option for the one that has a rectangle shape in the front. These 2 pieces are the facings that are going to go inside. These shapes here are going to turn out to be a type of mitred corner that's going to go in the inside. So basically we sew that together and then put the facing in there, and it will turn out with the same shape. The facing involves the whole hem, including the back. That's why it's a long piece. I have used this exact same sweater knit in many colors. I know the fabric really well, and I know I'd be happier to have the facing interface. So I use tricot knit interfacing. It's a type that does have some give. I'm doing the long sleeve version. For all the options, you finish the neckline with binding, but you have 2 options to make the binding longer and then tie it up, or you can leave it shorter and just do a loop and use a button. I'm going to be using the button option, not the tie version, but it'll still be the same binding piece. It'll just be shorter in this case because I'm not going to do the tie. This is another version. It's using the same pattern pieces. It's just that there's a separate cut line for this rounded shape in the front. So the other one that you saw was a rectangle right there. This one doesn't have facings. This is all finished with binding. The binding includes the whole area in the front and the hem on the back. So the binding piece is pretty long right here. The neckline would be finished with the binding in the same way. There isn't an official sleeveless option in the pattern, but I'm going to do this one sleeveless. So I've just cut my own binding there to finish the armholes at the end. This is a long facing piece that will go along the hem at the bottom, and there is a center back seam. I have already sewn it there with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You can see my piece is interfaced right there. This is the other piece, and that's how they're going to match up like that. So it's easy to see that this is how they're going to go. So I'm just going to put this like this, and then this is what is going to be sewn together, and on this side it's the same. This is how the corners look. I have pressed the seams open there, and this little shape that we had there is supposed to be like that. That is going to allow this edge to fold in afterwards really neatly like that. So it is important to follow that shape. I marked a little dot so I could pivot properly, and over here I'm just going to trim away the excess so that we have a nice little corner. You can have the facing end up being on the inside of the cardigan or on the outside of the cardigan. Here's the cardigan partially sewn. I've done the shoulder seams and the side seams at this point. You do need to have the side seams sewn for this type of facing right here. So I'm just going to line these up right sides together right there on one side, and then that will continue all along the bottom and then end up here along the other side as well. It will be all continuous. I have hand basted this along the edge. This is the center. This goes along the bottom, and over here I'm not going to pivot. I'm going to finish and then start again so that I get a really crisp point right there. And I'll be sewing with a 1/4 inch presser foot and just a straight stitch for this. You know, this is not something that's going to be stretching out, so I'm not concerned. After sewing the facing, I flipped it to the wrong side and I folded this inner edge by 3/8 of an inch. That is why you see 2 rows of hand basting. One was to get that first fold and then to hold the facing in place. You can see it's very neat right there. I'm going to sew this and I'm going to do it from the wrong side just so I can see what I'm doing here and just sew right there on the edge of the fold. This facing is interfaced, so I would want it on the top anyway, touching the presser foot. The binding has a center back seam, so I've sewn that. And now I've placed the binding onto the wrong side of the cardigan. You can see the shoulder seams there. These shoulder seams are stabilized to keep them from stretching out over time. There will be a sleeve here later. I prefer to sew my sleeve on the round and I have it ready here. You pin it right side to wrong side. It's hard to see because everything's black, but you can clearly see this is the wrong side, this is the right side of the binding. You sew it on at 1/4 of an inch. Now there are lots of little marks for you to line up here at the center, over here, little marks, one that matches the shoulder, one in the middle of the front over here, and then you're going to have some left over. I'm doing the option that just has a loop to put a button. So on one side, the binding's going to reach the end, and on the other side, it's going to be a little bit longer, so you can do that. But the technique is very easy. You just sew it, and then you flip the binding over to the right side, fold it in like this, and then top stitch. And I'm going to be hand basting that step there before top stitching. I'm just guiding the fabric along, but I'm trying not to push it or stretch it. I'm just letting the feed dogs move the fabric along so I don't end up with a wavy neckline. One of the ends is just going to finish right there, so I did that little seam in there by hand. It was just easier to access because it was so tiny. It's perfectly acceptable. There's going to be a button there covering that area. I wanted to show you what I've done to the loop. So after having an amount here, doing the loop, seeing how much I wanted to sew back in there, I just trimmed off the little bit I had left over. I finished that edge by hand, just doing like a blanket stitch there. All I did was sew this edge by hand, there, pretty invisibly. And that gets me the loop. So there's really nothing technological about that. I think I would always want to finish this off by hand. I wouldn't want to do bulky top stitching or anything with the machine right there. And then on this side, I have the button and that's it. This is the other cardigan I'm making, the one with a curved hemline. And the binding technique that you saw with the other one is exactly the same. I've pinned it onto the wrong side of the garment. So right side to wrong side. There are several marks along the way to match up here. The binding is slightly shorter than the rounded hem, and that's so it doesn't start stretching out and deforming. So that one matches the side seam. Over here on the curved edge, you're going to have 2 little notches that match the ones right there. And then you go up over here, up to the neckline. So we do this binding first. Once this binding is done, then we bind the neckline in the same way that you saw me do the other one. This is how this loop looks like. It's the same thing. That was done by hand, button sewn in there. And then this loop was just tacked right there in the edge. All of that by hand, pretty invisible. And it's going to keep it safe and secure without having any bulky machine top stitching over here. You can use a pretty big button there with that loop. This satin covered button is really pretty. I just found this in my stash as a single button I got from something sometime. So this is a great way to use a pretty buttons that you just have one of. This is my first one. I decided to use the wrong side of the fabric as the right side of the fabric in this case. The wrong side looks blacker than the right side of the fabric. So I wanted my cardigan to be a really sharp black. And it's pretty. I mean, it's not ugly. It's the same. It's just got a different look. You know, when you have a jersey, the wrong side looks a little different, but I think it looks cool, and I'm really glad I made it the other way around. Here is my little loop and button. I finished all of that by hand on the inside, and it's very neat. I don't think there was any way I could have been happy to do that by machine. Same as closing up the binding on this side, it was also done by hand, and I just chose a fun button. I chose a button that's not too contrasting, but has a little bit of shine. And there we have the facings. The facings are folded in on the inside. Now, if you didn't want to do that, I think you could just serge the edges and not have that little shape there when you did the mitered corners. That's up to you. I just followed the instructions, and I think this is super neat. There's no way I would have done this without all the hand basting. There's just no way. I could just see all these wavy things coming out in the end without the hand basting. So I'm really happy my facing turned out really smooth and neat. You saw that you finish all of this first. That includes the hem and the side seams. That's why the side seams need to be done at that point. And then it was just so easy. I really enjoyed it. It didn't take up much time to make. I had a lot of fun and just relaxed. Let's see it styled a few ways. This is my first Rosy cardigan from Sinclair Patterns. This is a size 16 with a toe file. This is the one that has a straight front, sort of a rectangle center front with facings inside. I have long sleeves here. Neckline has binding with a little button and loop, but you'll see those details up close. I love it over wide leg pants with a cami. This look is just totally me. There is a shorter length available. Then this is the hip level, and then there's a lower one, so you can choose what length your cardigan is. Different way to finish the center front and the hem. I thought it was really cool with the facings. Super neat with the mitered corners inside. I really like the depth of this neckline, and I think it looks good with a cami like this that shows my chest a little bit. And if I wore a turtleneck or something with a high neckline, the cardigan would look good as well. The shoulder fit, the sleeve fit, it's all perfect. Here you can see the neckline. It's rounded, it's not too low, and it's finished with binding. You saw how to do that on my channel. And on one side it finishes right at the edge. That's where the button is, and on the other side there's a loop. There's also an option of making the ties longer, and then you have longer ties that you tie up in a bow, but I prefer this one. I think it's so clean. It's a real basic. I know I'm gonna wear this a lot. Black is gonna go with everything, and I was really missing a basic cardigan like this. I love that single closure. I love how streamlined it looks, and it's bulk free. It can go over anything. I love it. I know I'm gonna be taking this wherever I go. It's small enough to fit in a large bag if I want to have backup in, you know, freezing air conditioned area, and it's just great. It's just such an easy make, and it's a basic I know I'm gonna wear a lot. This type of cardigan can go over any of my dresses. Fit and flare especially I think is perfect because it's not bulky, and as the dress has a little bit more volume, the cardigan can just go on top without poofing out like other longer cardigans would. This basic is just so great. I know I'm gonna be putting it on over a lot of my dresses. This one here is the Claudia dress, also from Sinclair Patterns. It's an athletic knit, and I love it with the cardigan. What I have here is one of my favorite dresses. It's the Betty dress from Sinclair Patterns. It does have a hack on the skirt that gives it a bit more volume, but the shape, the tulip shape on one side and the bodice, it's all the same. This is a fit and flare dress, and I have my black cardigan here. Because the background is black, I'm just keeping it all black with the accessories here, but later on you're going to see that I'm also going to style this dress with my navy cardigan, and I'll just do it a little bit different there. Love the look here. As I said, this is going to be a staple, and it's going to go over so many of my dresses really well. This is the blue one. This sleeveless version is not official in the pattern, but why not? I tried it on before doing the binding and figured out, you know, the width is fine over here. I'm usually going to wear this over things, so I don't mind that this is a little wider, so it covers all of the dresses or tanks I might wear. So that is absolutely fine. I actually use the same binding piece here to cut this binding, so it turns out the same width. I just adjusted the length to be about 90% of the circumference of the armhole, and that was all okay. I used the exact same technique. For this one, I was just more careful because it's all rounded over here. I didn't really want to stretch it out. So yeah, this took a little while longer to do, but I think it turned out nice. This shape here is really pretty and is really going to show off details that your dresses might have. I love that. Finish on the top is all the same with the same loop and button, and I really love it. Let's see this one styled a few ways. This is my second Rosy cardigan from Sinclair Patterns, size 16, tall file. In this case, I made a sneaky sleeveless version. It's not an official option, but I just made mine sleeveless. And the main difference with the other one is that this one has a curved center front shape. All of this is finished with binding all the way around, including the hem, the center front curve, and the neckline, so it's a little different, but it's cut from the same pattern pieces. And I love it in this navy rib knit. I love this Nyoka dress in athletic knit. It's also from Sinclair Patterns. The Nyoka dress has a beautiful feature in the center at the waist, or sort of below the bust. And the shape of the cardigan at the front as it opens out a little bit really allows you to see the detail there, so I think this is a great pairing. This is the same rounded neckline as the black one. It's got the same type of binding, button and loop here, same type of finish. I used the original armhole of the cardigan that would have a sleeve and just bound it. I have so many dresses with navy backgrounds. It's one of my favorite backgrounds, you know, black or navy. So I know this cardigan is going to go a long way, and I love how simple it is. Sleeveless is going to really work for me because I love sleeveless little layers I can put on top. Here is my Rosy cardigan again, this time with wide leg pants made out of rayon linen blend. A colorful singlet underneath just to contrast a little and make it not so monochromatic. I do like monochromatic, but I also enjoy a little bit of print and color in here. And the tank I have underneath is super cute. I really love this casual outfit. It's really comfortable as well. I have a colorful tank tucked in just to highlight the waist a little bit, just because I'm wearing layers. I like to do that sometimes. You had already seen my modified Betty dress with my black cardigan. It has a bit of navy blue in there. I think I can pull it off with my second version as well. This navy cardigan goes over this dress beautifully. It just brings out the blue in the print. And I'm also trying to bring out more blue by keeping the shoes and the bag also in the same navy. This is also a fit and flare dress. I think this type of cardigan that's a little shorter, has a curved front, can really work here. I'm really happy to have them. I think they're great. I think the fit is amazing. Having lots of options in one pattern is always great as well because you can get different looks. I love light layering pieces, especially in the climate that I live in, because sometimes I need something light when I go into a heavily air-conditioned area. And these are small, they can fit in my handbag, so I'm really happy to have them. Remember that the Rosy cardigan is 27% off through the 3rd of December, so there's quite a few days to have a look at the website, see all the tester photos. I hope this tutorial was helpful on how to finish the bindings. I was really happy to share these with you today, and that's all from me. I'll see you again very soon with more sewing. Bye!